Right then, so we're live, guys. So yeah, hello everyone that's already sitting here watching. We've got quite a few comments at the moment. So yeah, if you're watching, let us know where you're from. Whilst we let a few more people jump into the YouTube and the SEMrush webinar section of the site. So yeah, what you guys been up to before we get started?
Yeah, you go, Matt.
Oh, okay, I'll go first. Just general day-to-day life of Data Studio, really. Messing around with reports, trying to fix everything, make sure we're getting where we need to be. Yeah, I'd say that's been pretty much my week so far anyway.
Yeah, I'd say pretty similar here. Doing a lot of auditing at the moment. So yeah, it's strange with lockdown. I mean, lockdown I seem to be a lot more productive, but you have a lot more to do every day. So I'm trying to stop myself doing sort of 10-hour, 12-hour days continuously. So that's yeah, going to try and get that work-life balance back, Paul.
Yeah, that's it.
The lesson for this week.
So you two didn't have a Phileas and Ferb moment this morning, is it? What are we going to do today?
No. Oh yeah, that. Yeah. Which day is it? I have a which day is it moment quite a lot. I try and yeah, we have different breakfasts in the house to try and work out which day it is, and if it's waffles with the kids, I know it's a weekend. But yeah, otherwise I'm a bit lost. But no, still enjoying it.
That's it. Yeah, so we've got people from Netherlands, Santa Monica, California, yeah, Mexico. 7 p.m. somewhere. So that's good.
Oh,
Rhode
Philippines.
Island. Yeah, that's it. Philippines.
See, I was on the phone to Malaysia this morning.
Oh, nice. Sacramento. So we've got Simon Cox there. Belgium.
Donegal is the coolest place on the planet.
Yeah. That's it, right? So I think we've given everyone a chance to.
You should be visualizing this with Data Studio. You see, this would be great. You could have a little.
Yeah,
coming up on the map.
That's it. Yeah, the new maps integration. Yeah, so right. Thanks for everyone joining us. Today we're going to be going over Data Studio with two Data Studio Jedis here, as I call them, Nick and Matt. I'll let you guys introduce yourself to everyone so they understand who you are and where you come from.
Yeah. Yes, I'll start. Yeah, so my name's Nick Wilsdon. I'm been primarily an SEO really for the best part of 20 years. I work with various clients, usually enterprise level, Vodafone quite a lot. I don't think the American people won't be too aware of them, but they used to be over in the US at one point. So yeah, that's but yeah, very much into Data Studio and data and understanding how to make, well, how to drive my activity with analytics, really, whether that's sort of political activity through the organization or actual, you know, the data that we need to kind of do proof of concepts for SEO work.
That's it. And over to you, Matt.
Perfect. So my name is Matt Jones. I'm SEO manager at Rise at 7. So we're a creative SEO agency, work with a large range of clients. Always looking out for Data Studio stuff, basically, is primarily what I'll do. I've been in SEO for probably just over 5 years now, and pretty much straight away took on Data Studio and thought, how can we start reporting better for everyone else, give everyone more insights, and just try and automate everything as well.
The automation. So, that's great. And I believe you guys have been having a little play around with the SEMrush Data Studio connection. So who wants to go first and show us what you've managed to come up with?
Absolutely. So we'll let Matt, yeah, you can show us that.
Fantastic. I'll go first. So yeah, just been playing around with the SEMrush Data Studio connector. It's a relatively new product that they've brought out, but one that's definitely made everything a lot easier. So I've put in a varied sort of range of different things that you can do with this. Some a bit more advanced, some a little bit more easier to get to grips with straight away. So the first two graphs that you can see are essentially using the blend of SEMrush, Google Analytics, and Google Search Console. So each of these, we've blended the data sources, and it basically allows us to see for any change that goes across in visibility through SEMrush, what difference does that make to our sessions, and also the impressions that we're seeing as well. And then again, just replicated a very similar graph, but just this time use the average position with organic sessions themselves. So it just gives you a nice way to kind of pull through various data from different sources and see how they're actually affecting each other as well. So it's not just, here we can see the sessions in Google Analytics, and there's a separate graph for impressions from Search Console. Building it all into one and blending it's probably the easiest way to do it. A couple more we've got there are using the position tracking tool that obviously SEMrush have built into Data Studio. And what we've done here is also then blended that with Search Console data. So we can see the position and the volume that we're getting through SEMrush there, but we can also then see the impressions, clicks, and click-through rate from Search Console. Just to give you a better idea of, you could add previous position there as well, or the difference in position. So you can kind of see the difference you can get through click-through rate, the amount of clicks or impressions, dependent on which position you sat in the search results. And again, just another one there, we're looking at the traffic and the search volume for each term that I've come across during each day, and then looking at the traffic percentage that we're driving as well at that time. So these are just a really good way to kind of track over time for different implementations that we're making on the website, or for any ranking improvements we might be seeing, what impact is that having on the bottom line of the business as well. One of the other connectors that SEMrush have built is obviously their backlink audit. So we can start seeing the top referring domains as well. So what this does is just allows us to check each referring domain for that chosen website. We can start seeing who's linking to them, see the authority score. You can play around with a little bit of a formula and pull through the logo as well if you wanted it to look a bit more visual. Unfortunately, that's not built into Data Studio, but there are ways around it. And then moving forward, looking at the site health audit as well. So this is a really good one to have a very good overview of how's your website performing and what SEMrush are seeing through their site health audit. So we've got a nice little barometer there to say, where's your site health sitting? Obviously, you always want it to be in green, so it's nice to have it visually as well. And then out of everything and all the pages that it's crawled on your website, how many warnings, errors, etc. are we seeing as well? And for each of these, you can start to compare them date on date. So you can start to see, once we've implemented these fixes, what impact is that having, and are we actually getting to the bottom of the issues? And then just another quick one, not particularly SEMrush built in, but it's brand new anyway into Data Studio. And it's also useful to have alongside your site health audit as well. And this is obviously just the core vitals metrics that Google have just released as well. So you've got your LCP, FID, and CLS. Just gives you a nice way to track those. And using a filter, you can start to look at mobile devices or just desktop devices. But these filters can obviously, you can then group them to all of the other graphs, all of the charts you're building, and just get a much better idea of, without having to build 5 different dashboards or different pages to look at different device types. Simply just swap it right there in the first report itself. So I will let you jump on now, Nick.
Yeah, that's really good, Matt. Yeah, I didn't get too much time to go into the SEMrush connector. I'm very happy it's there though, so I've started looking at the various metrics and data points. It's definitely going to be useful. Let's share. But yeah, I just started creating a SEMrush branded e-commerce report, which I think we're going to share some of these, aren't we, with people afterwards? So
yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, if you share the links,
be happy
we
to
get them up on the webinar page. Yeah.
So yeah, this isn't. I mean, essentially, this is taking some of my previous work, and then what I do with the SEMrush connector is exactly as Matt's gone ahead and done, is kind of overlay the positioning over some of these e-commerce graphs. So yeah, I mean, and this is essentially data coming through from GA. So it's using GA as a source. But you can see here how you can organize your digital sales, your visits to the site. This is very orientated towards the commercial metrics. So we're looking at different channel groupings. We can then switch it to view. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, make him bigger. So yeah, we can then switch into see different channels, and it'd be brilliant to overlay the SEMrush data with this, so that we can start to see as ranking positions improve, how that affects some of these commercial graphs. We look here at the business impact, revenue that's generated, average order value, devices that users are on, channels that are driving revenue. It's quite a useful one. I seem to use that quite a lot. It's nice to see organic search up the top there, but it's a very good way to visually explain to your stakeholders how important organic search is. And top selling products as well. So working out which of the products are working revenue by channel. So then you can subdivide this by channel, and that's also useful as well for your source medium to see what your relative market share is in different search engines. So this is something I'd quite like to integrate with the SEMrush tool. If we look at, I can show you a couple of other things we've got on here. Google Trends data, I'm a huge fan of. So again, we kind of look and see what the interest is here for different terms. And you can, again, this is quite useful from a commercial standpoint, because you can, this is one for telco, you can start to see that in the telco space, iPhone has basically gone down over time. You can see each launch here is basically slightly smaller than the last one, but the real growth area on devices is around Huawei and Oppo, and both those have shot up amazingly fast over the time. So you can find different Google Trends points that are quite interesting to people. I think going into, yeah, so back to your CrUX data, and I think actually this is one, Jerry White's actually on the call here, so this is one that Jerry keyed me into, so we'll give him full respect for this. This has been remade with the new CrUX connector, which is out, and the reason I like this approach is because you can start to look at page speed in a competitive way. So we can have first domain, second domain, third domain, fourth domain, and we can have these comparatively against each other. And I find that actually is sometimes better from a political standpoint to actually move the needle, because if you can see that your competitors are speeding up, and you get this the CrUX data monthly. If you can see that they're speeding up over time, let's pick one that is. So yep, domain, roughly domain A. But if you can see one speeding up over time, then that gives you more influence over the business to realise that you should also be speeding up, because very much page speed is about your comparative speed to your competitors as well. Yeah, I see we're getting a lot of questions in the channel. This is actually a really easy one to put together if you're on Data Studio. I think we're going to send out the link to this, but this is actually a report that would take you roughly about 5 minutes to put together. So we can put out the link on that, and let's take, give you this one. If you go to, I know it's going to be a very hands-on seminar. If you go to conversion uplift, Neil has actually, that's going to take slightly too long, isn't it? Yeah, he needs to do something on his page speed. Yeah, so if you go to conversion uplift co.uk, you can see here that Neil has actually created a guide here, a really step-by-step guide to putting this report together. So I'd absolutely recommend that. Go and have a look. It's conversion uplift co.uk, how to create a page speed insight competitor dashboard. I think we'll share some of the links after this, but that's a very handy report. I think other things I quite like in this, I pull through, I tend to pull through a lot of data from Search Console, and I bring Search Console into Data Studio. And,
Nick, can you just zoom in a little bit on your screen just so people can see? They can see everything. That's all. Zoom in a little bit.
It's like going in.
Yeah, I think that's a bit better.
This is for you, Paul, isn't it? Because it's slightly older people on the call. Our site isn't quite what it used to be. Here you go. Let's.
Right, easy type out,
easy. You're only slightly older than me, Paul. Yeah, actually, good point. So yeah, this is a Google Google Search Console integration, and again, it's really simple. It's done with the default plugins, and again, this is something that's very easy to set up. And you'll get here an idea of clicks and impressions. I tend to go down looking at terms where there's a large number of impressions and a small number of clicks, and try and work out why that discrepancy exists. There's good rationale for bringing this into Data Studio, which is that if you're in the main interface for Search Console and you download from that interface, you can take 1,000 rows at a time, which is great. But if you take it directly into Data Studio, you can then start to take 5,000 rows for each day. So immediately, and you can export here, you see, to Excel. So immediately you're taking 5 times, we've got access to 5 times more data by just simply displaying it in Data Studio. So that's a very handy way of getting more data, getting access to more data without having to do anything complicated. Yeah, so default plugin, I can see that in the questions. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's a good question. So when you're actually in Data Studio, you have an option just to add data. And when you go to the sources, let's give you a really practical thing. Let's go here. So this is sample Search Console data. And literally, if we're adding data here,
there we go.
We have connectors. And these are the default connectors. And you can see here that within Data Studio, we can connect Google Analytics natively. That's without any programming at all. Google Ads, Google Sheets, BigQuery. Just previously, someone mentioned Google My Business. I'm pretty sure there's a connector for that.
Yeah, I thought there was.
There is a default one for that, isn't there?
Yeah. There's no default one anymore.
It might be through Supermetrics.
Oh yeah. So, and this is, and as Matt says, this is G Trends. This is a great one. So, if people are wondering how I did the Google Trends graphs,
exactly what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
where did you get that one from?
Strategy. This is a secret one. So basically, Chris and the guys over at Strategic with a Q at the end. So if you just put in G Trends app Strategic, you'll get their website, and they produce this community connector for everyone. So, and you literally download it from a link on their site, and they'll give you an API key, and you can use it then for free. And I think as long as you're sensible with it, then they're quite happy for everyone to use it. So that's a really good tip. But yeah, basically this is how you kind of add data. So all of these ones by default, I mean that there's a default connector to pull this data directly into Data Studio. And you're literally talking a few clicks to get that working. Beyond the default ones, there's a huge number of sort of multi-meta connectors, I think we probably call them. Supermetrics is one, Adverity. I was talking to someone yesterday about BrandWatch, how to connect BrandWatch data into this, simple web data into this. This funnel has 500 different marketing sources. So, and a lot of these ones can be paid for, and they mean that you don't have any programming to do at all. So literally, so this is kind of the basis behind what makes us excited about Data Studio, is the fact that we get access to data from different platforms, and we can blend it together exactly as Matt showed you in his report to really kind of get different insight. So we've got 2 completely different data sources. We blend them together, and we get to see ranking positions over over revenue or anything like that. As Jerry says, Chris Green is a G Trends app. So yeah, that's a quite a handy one. I think just we will absolutely, we'll share these reports with you. I'll just leave you with one tip, a couple of tips actually. Yeah, the one thing I quite like doing within my reports is linking out to other reports, because there's so many people working on Data Studio already in the community, and you can literally just this is very pretty, it could be a list of links to be honest, but you can just you can start to then link out in this structure to all the other reports that people have made. So you could link out from here to Matt's report, to anything that's being produced in the community. And the last tip that I really like is putting in a contact page is brilliant in a report. I don't think enough people do this. So I always make sure there's a connector and details there. And you can also embed other documents into your Data Studio. So I tend to write a report definitions document in Word, Google Word. Yeah. So yeah, you basically can create that, maintain that centrally, and then you can include that data in your report. So it's quite handy. That's a SEMrush guide to metrics and definitions.
That's great.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll be sharing these afterwards. You can use this as a template and start to build it out yourself. Yeah.
That's it, right. So someone's asking about is setting up compared, the main comparative intuitive. You can. I think you've got a good example of that in your slides in your Data Studio, haven't you, Matt? Where you can look at competitors and start to understand their metrics and keeping an eye with the main analytics section of the connector.
Yeah, definitely. So I think obviously, once you've built out your dashboard and built everything that you need for your business internally at that point, or for your client, that's always going to be the first port of call. You probably won't need or be able to access half of that information for all of your sort of competitors as well, but there are definitely things we can. So as Nick showed in his, we can start looking at the CrUX data for various domains. So you can start pulling in competitors there as well. And again, there's just a lot of data that you can pull through. So you could run site audits using SEMrush, for example, and just start to pull everything through to get a comparison of yours or your client's website versus competitors as well.
That's it. And I like the way that you blended the Search Console and the analytics with your positions. I don't know if you want to show that to the people once more.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we probably do zooming in and just going into that in a little bit more depth, just so they understand what that actually means.
Perfect. So, yeah, I'll zoom in a bit and hopefully make it a bit better to see. But essentially, using this one, what we're doing is taking the position tracking that's available within your SEMrush account. Obviously, you set up the keywords that you want to track there. You can add whichever one's the most relevant for your business. And by default, you'll be able to pull through the keyword, the position, and the volume. But there's also additional metrics you can get there, such as previous positions based on the time frame, and anything that you'd expect to see within your SEMrush account anyway. But what we can do then to sort of take it to the next level is by blending it with Search Console, because we can use connectors to say these dates match, so we can use the dates as a join key. So to blend any data, you've got to have join keys. So each set of data or each data set you're pulling through needs to have at least one common denominator. Generally, it'll be the date. That tends to be the easiest one. And once you've connected those, you can pull through as many of the dimensions and metrics that are available in each as you're going to need when you're trying to build your table or your chart. So for this one, fairly simple. We just decided to pull, obviously, the keyword position and volume from the SEMrush connector. And then from Search Console, we wanted to look at the impressions, clicks, and click-through rate. So the main reasoning behind this is saying, obviously, you know, over time, if you're tracking position changes, let's say we've gone from position 3 to position 1, what impact has that then given us to the amount of impressions that we get, the clicks, and the click-through rate? Because essentially what Search Console can do in the background with Data Studio is match up those keywords with the query that's come through and being reported on in Search Console. So we're essentially kind of marrying up a few various different parts of the data within those, but it gives you a nice overview of saying, here's the bottom line impact of if we can then increase these rankings, or even if the rankings drop, what decrease have we seen from that as well?
That'd be great, Matt. So that'd be really good to segment and have part of the site traffic and then see that against certain groups of keywords. I could see that working really well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot more you can do with it. So obviously that's kind of the top level. Here's how we can blend that data, but there's various ways we can build it as well. That was a table. You could pull it through into pie charts, general charts, line trends. So obviously from each of them, you can then start segmenting as well.
Yeah. So that'd be incredibly useful, because I think a problem you often get is the business is sort of saying, well, we've moved some positions from up to 1 to 3, but you're dealing with web traffic across the entire domain. So then they're looking at their overall GA traffic and they're sort of saying, well, you know, has that had an impact on the entire traffic for the domain? And often it hasn't. So if you could segment that down, so you just have certain directories or where you're actually working and improving those directories, I think that could be a really useful view. Yeah,
definitely. So I mean, obviously using the Search Console connector, you can start to segment it based on which directories everything's sitting with the landing page. So if anyone is familiar with sort of the additional filters you can build within Data Studio as standard, you can add them to each various data set of a blended source as well. So another example of that wasn't on that dashboard, but is looking at brand versus non-brand clicks from Search Console. There's a few ways to do it. You can do it with a case statement, which if you kind of know SQL, you can probably build that out fairly easily. And if not, you're essentially blending Search Console against itself twice, but using various filters to say this is branded, this is non-branded, and let's report on that as well.
Yep, that's it. And funny you should mention SQL, because someone just asked a question about that. So if we connect Data Studio with SQL, we would still need to get our IP and DB whitelisted. You might have more experience with that, Nick. I don't know if you have with the data sets that you work with.
Yes, more devs do most of that.
Yeah.
Thanks for all the dev questions.
That's it.
Yeah.
Straight over.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to give a definitive answer on
So
that.
I mean, I like one of the other metrics you put in that studio, Matt, was the search volume. Which I mean, a lot of people don't realize that you can actually pull that through with these reports as well. So it gives you an idea of like when you compare that. And I have some reports that I use Data Studio for where I pull that search volume in and then I place it next to the impressions that I'm getting within Search Console, so you can really understand what's what. But I think more to the point is that where we've just like literally just had a recent Google update, the type of reports that you're putting together there, like Nick was saying, is that when traffic or users are coming through from a certain section of the site and you get hit with like an update, like a lot of people have, and relevance changes. Sometimes it may look like you've actually got a drop in traffic, but you not necessarily have, because it's just that the relevance has kicked in a little bit more, and there's not really a big shift in actual like business metrics, as you would say, Nick.
I think that's so true, Paul. And I think this is, and people often, one of the reasons I got into Data Studio was so that we could, it was mostly for politics, to be honest, so that I could visualize the commercial metrics around SEO, because often in SEO you're put in a position where you're reporting on rankings and you don't get that interaction with senior people, and having a dashboard allows you to start to visualize those really important metrics that matter for the business. And often in businesses, it's often, well, that may not have been set up properly for organic. That often happens. So then it becomes a use case for resolving those analytics problems that you have across the business, because you need to visualize it. Once your stakeholders see the kind of work you're doing and the dashboards you're creating, then that gives it credibility. And then you can start to ask for example, for custom revenue figures that you wouldn't normally get from different parts of the business to be given to you. And even with some of the reports that I've built, we've even built them using Google Sheets behind the scenes, because Google Sheets might sound really low tech, but it's the integration with Data Studio is fantastic. And you can have a Google Sheet where you have a certain team in the business filling it out once a month, giving you that commercial information that you need, and then that's being brought into Data Studio with the connector, and then blended, as Matt's done, against other metrics that you're looking at from an SEO point of view or anything else you're doing, or and that's amazingly useful. So yeah, that focus on commercial metrics is essential. And
I think what'd be good for some of the people to understand, if they're just getting into Data Studios, how often the dashboards would update if you just left them alone. I think with Sheets, I think it's once every 5 or 15 minutes, something like that, automatically pulls that updated data through.
Yeah, that's an issue. It's not going to be good for sort of real-time data.
Yeah.
Really, we found that, and the speed and performance is sometimes a problem when you're connecting via Sheets. I mean, that's what you have to consider, is that Data Studio is free, Sheets is essentially free. So sometimes when you get into the next layer on, you're then thinking about your SQL and your connection to BigQuery to improve the performance, because then you have a database behind it. But yeah, it still works though very, very well. And I'd say Google Sheets for monthly data is perfect. Weekly data is perfect. So sometimes you don't have to overcomplicate these things sometimes.
Yeah, that's it. It's more the point, just so people understand it updates automatically on its own. It's not something you've got to hit the refresh button with, because they're obviously in Data Studio there is the little refresh icon there that you can update on. We have got a couple more questions coming. What about natural language processing and get that at Google Data Studio? I've not seen anything like with that. I don't know if you guys have at all.
They've been. I know my team have been playing with that. They've been doing this around intent. So, give you the rough outline of what they've been doing without giving too much away. So I think they've been looking a lot at people also ask material, and then taking that in from Google, and then also looking a lot at Search Console keyword data, because I know I mentioned earlier that you can download 1,000 rows through the interface, you can get 5,000 rows through that connection, but if you connect via the API, you can get 50,000 rows per day. So you start to build up a huge database of keyword data from Google, and you can be taking. I mean, 50,000 is a lot. I mean, as people say, you probably don't need that. Maybe you need like 70% of that. But you start to build up a huge owned database of keyword data, and then you can start to apply some of these APIs. So you can then start to look at natural language APIs, see how you can break down these keywords by intent, because I think that's really where we're all moving to in SEO, is how can we be cleverer and how can we understand what's behind these terms, why are people doing these searches, and then we're providing them with the right kind of information, and then we're fitting it then with Google, because we want to fit into that transactional, informational, navigational kind of format. So yeah, I think it's definitely something everyone's doing, but if you're getting into that, you're definitely already at the stage where you're putting all your data in BigQuery, I'd say, or AWS.
Yeah. Pulling it through from there. And then we've got another one on assisted conversions. So I don't know if you've got any experience on that. I mean, I know it's a pain point for me. Don't know if you've got any clever ways of extracting that out.
Personally, not for Data Studio, or not in an easy way anyway. So obviously within the Google Analytics connector itself, we've got probably 90% of the information that we can grab if we went into analytics itself. Unfortunately, some of that 10% is assisted conversions, which is just one of those pain points, I think, and something that, hopefully in future they will start to pick up on. It's one of the things that a lot of people tend to want the answer to, or they want to look into. So it's a bit strange that it is the part that's missing from there. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no easy way to do it at the moment, unless Nick has a genius hack I've not thought of.
No, that's a pain. Things are getting better all the time, so that's what I kind of tell myself.
But you can extract it with the API, surely, though, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not done that with the API. Okay.
Right.
I should have my dev in my bedroom. I should have kept him somewhere under the desk.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so he can pop out and answer. But yeah, no, I know. I think I've looked at it once around the API. I think there is a way of extracting it out in that way.
I like Amanda's question.
Yeah, I was literally just about to go.
Absolutely knock that one out of the park. Yeah.
Go on. I'll let you take that one in.
Yeah, managing reports, organizing everything. That's really, it's a complete pain. When you're managing the data sources, it gets wildly out of control really, really quickly. So a common naming convention is absolutely essential. And come up with that, get everyone to agree to that, because otherwise you just will spend half your life wondering what each source was. And especially when it gets into blending, because often with blending, you're creating multiple versions of each connection to be able to do the blend. So then it gets really complicated. Common naming convention will absolutely save your life. Unfortunately, it's not really a good kind of folder structure behind it. There's no folder structure behind Data Studio, which is, I think, because when you get into Data Studio, you have each, when you log in, you know what it's like. You log in, you've got your last 90 data report in there, and honestly, if Google could do something, it'd be great for them to start to organize the folders.
So instead of it saying all website data.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, to be honest, this is why I started working on this framework, the framework that I showed you, because I'm using multiple pages, but then that allows you to have a framework for structuring your reports. And this is why I quite like this approach. I used a kind of iconography across each page. So I have performance reports. I then have insight reports, action linked reports. You use different icons on each one, and then you can kind of link out. So you can use internal links to all the other reports that are connected to it. And that's, to be honest, that worked really well for me because it just gave me a focal point for each team. So there was one kind of keystone report that then linked to absolutely everything else, and that was then very easy to find. I think otherwise you run the risk of just too many separate reports, people logging in and out of them all the time, and it's very, very hard to organize. So that would be my recommendation.
That's good. And then we've got another one here, which is could you explain on the topic connection to API with SEO tools? Like Nick mentioned, people also ask API. So, do you want to pick up on that one, Nick, at all? Since they're mentioning you,
API,
connection to API with the SEO tools, like it. It must be API, I'd imagine.
API,
like other APIs, like people also.
So connecting to the API. So how do you? I mean, this is the easy bit behind Data Studio is that you have the common connectors. So you have community connectors that do the API connection for you effectively. So this is why Data Studio doesn't require you to, well, initially to get to be a programmer. So this is why it sort of democratized data and allowed all of us to become, data geeks now, because we don't need to code each API. So yeah, your connectors are the way forward, and other than your connectors, it's the meta connectors. So it's the Supermetrics and other people who, if the platforms that you're using don't have a connector created and they're popping up every day, then there's going to be some sort of meta connector that's already connected them, and they have 500 plus different connectors. So Funnel, Supermetrics, all of these ones work like that.
Yeah, HubSpot need to hurry up and create one.
They do.
Simon Cox has asked a question, which I think you've mentioned this to me before, Nick, about.
Yeah, I love this. It's my secret tip. That one worked really well. Secret squirrel tip. This also what you can do in Data Studio is you can add GA code for each report, which is great. You actually then create a new Google Analytics property. You use that code in each of your reports, and if you have different pages, then it will pull through the page alongside the traffic, the views, all the other metrics in relation to the engagement for that report. So you end up with a sort of super report that has I think mine's, I can't show you that, mine's even got maps on it, so I can see who's accessed from different countries. And because I work a lot with multiple markets, I can see exactly who's accessed from which market and the number of users. So having put this whole structure together, I can see exactly the usage that's going on across the group. GA is your friend, and that's a little thing that's really overlooked with Data Studio, that little box that you can put the GA code into. So yeah, add GA tracking to your report.
So where do you place that? Is that within the theme or the style?
Let's see a minute.
Yeah, it shows.
It's in the report setting. So it's a very practical one. There you go. Let's do that one. Yep. So if we go to report settings, can you see that?
Yeah.
And there.
Oh, nice.
Stick that one in.
There you go.
It's perfect. So put that in, and literally then, what's really important then is what you're naming your reports. So you can see here that this page for the revenue, that's so performance revenue model. So come up with a common naming convention for this, and then this will appear on your GA reports next to your traffic.
That is pretty slick.
And you can pick up then you'll have it's a really useful report, because then you see exactly who's using it and how they're using it and the length of time they're using it. So what I do is I often launch new pages within this, and then see if people are actually using it and they finding it useful, and then reporting that back to the business.
That's good. That's a good little tip, that one is. Yeah. That's a good little bit of gold.
Okay, that make up some points for not knowing the dev question. That's fine.
So yeah, obviously with this, there is lots of ways that you can use the information. So you can connect Search Console, Analytics, and obviously SEMrush. Have you guys pulled anything together to do with like any sort of like compare analysis, like how many backlinks they've been gathering, or did you get that deep into it at all?
Yes, I did have a play with it. It's not in my dashboard at the minute, but I can build that in before sort of sharing it around anyway. But it is something that I've looked into. One of the good little things that you can do with it is obviously, depending on what you want to sort of track, when it comes to sort of the top referring domains, you can look at obviously the total number of domains that are linking to you. You can look at how many have been lost and how many new ones have arrived on each date. So it gives you a really good way to see not only yours, but you can then start using that for your competitors as well. And the good thing about the SEMrush connector is the parameters that it allows you to set as default, but you can also have them customizable within the editable part as well. So by default, you'll pull in a specific domain, for example, where you'll pull all the data from. But within the report itself, as long as you've set it up correctly, you can then keep changing that domain. And each time it changes, you'll pull through that different competitor or a different website that you might own. So it gives you a really quick and easy way to be able to just overlay the new information and see it quickly without having to completely rebuild a report and get it all that way.
That's great. I know we were talking about that before we jumped on it. We have got a couple more questions from our friend Jerry asking what the date range is in there. Yeah, make sure you get them right, Matt. In the reports then, what does the date range dimension do? So he's obviously on about that section that you were just in, Nick. We put you on the spot, Matt.
Oh, we'll go for me. I was going to let Nick do it because I'd over there. See, I knew he'd do this. He would tell me about it. So the date range dimension, obviously, by default, you can change the date range that you're looking at reporting on. Pretty standard to what you'd expect in analytics. You can do a sort of customizable, specific date ranges, but you can also do month to date, year to date, this month as a whole, whatever it might be. So the date range that I mentioned in the report settings is setting your default date range. So if you're sort of reporting monthly for each client, you might want to do it as last month. And by default, what it will then do is pull from the first date to the last date of that prior month. Some people have more specific use cases in terms of the date, but that will set your default date range, which you can customize throughout by adding a little date range picker, but that's the default one.
I seem to spend half my life trying to get the date ranges right and aligned with the rest of the business. Yeah, good tip. Find out what the rest of the business is reporting on before you make your dashboard. That's my top tip. Have a quiet coffee with the
analytics. About doing year over year, and I know when you set like your tables up or whatever it is, you can actually set to automatically compare the previous period, or you can set it custom. So then that way you select it in the date picker, so year on year and previous period or month or custom. I mean, however you want to compare that data. And then you've got enough on there, which is Q for Nick from Jerry again. He's definitely watching it all the way through.
It definitely is.
So that's
explain that Jerry's Matt's colleague. So let's probably wondering why he's following you, Matt. Yeah. It's good they're checking on your work.
Yeah. He's here just to keep me on my toes. That's what he's doing.
Right, GA code. Yeah, so I think we picked up on all the questions in the chat there, and I know this is quite a sort of like hands-on webinar. It's not something that we can sort of like go on about for too long, but I think we can pretty much wrap it up unless anyone else has got any more questions. If you're listening in and you've got some more questions for us here, then we can pick up on those. So we've got one here. When pulling dates, is it done at the end of the day, or sometimes GA takes longer? Yeah, so it's asking about, obviously, is there a time lag between GA and that being presented with any of the Data Studio reports? I know generally there is a little bit of a lag in GA in general, especially getting through into conversions. But I can't say that I've noticed any lag through to Data Studio. I don't know if you guys have experienced anything in that at all.
No, I've not really seen that.
No. Just the general lag within analytics itself.
Yeah.
I'd say, I mean, the performance is probably one of the biggest issues, I'd say, with Data Studio, because you'll see, I mean, even as I was jumping between the screens there, you can see that, that ends up being an issue. So, yeah, I mean, think in terms of that, just, think about the charts that you have on each page. Don't go crazy. Think about, each one's pulling through data. So try and be as economical as you can with what's on each page in your design. That was something I definitely picked up on. And then obviously consider the fact that, Data Studio is free. GA is, unless you're on 360, is free. So, you may need to at some point jump to BigQuery, which I haven't really talked about a lot in this one, but having that database storage just does speed things up dramatically, because then you're pulling it from from a database, not from connectors. And in terms of cost, actually, that's really, I've found it to be pretty economical. And you're talking about, to get, it can be anything around 150 US per month would allow you to pull in log files, build up that kind of database of Search Console data. So you can get something that's really quite valuable for the business for not a huge amount of money. And if you can run this past your data team and explain that, the SEO team, this is a project that the SEO team wants to own and to learn, then you might find you get quite a lot of support from that side of the business. Because this is where, and this, to be honest, is why we got into Data Studio, is that, data teams are enormously busy. All the data analysts have big data projects to get on with, and this is something that the SEO team can really do independently. So yeah, have a word with your clients or business, see if there's an area you can go in there.
I think one of the other things we probably should mention is the fact that you're able to email these reports weekly and stuff straight from within Data Studio. So if you've got like a client report that needs to be pinged out for a certain date range and a certain day of the month, you can do that. I don't know if you use it in any other different way. Like, is there any way of like alerts and stuff like that?
Yeah, when I mail stuff out, and I just say on that point, a really good tip is, can you see that one? Yeah, can you see that?
No, we've got nothing. Oh, here we go. Here it comes.
See, that's what I was talking about. So yeah, when you're setting up your Data Studio, so I always go for 1240 by 1754, which gives you a really good PDF sized output. So if we take it to there, you can see it on there. You can just export as a PDF, and it's perfectly sized. So that's like a small tip, but it's kind of handy.
Yeah.
So
you can also have it automatically email, can't you, as well, straight from Data Studio?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah, stop in that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that'd be quite helpful for people. So
I think on Jerry's talking about the extract data connector, which is also something that's really useful. So if you do have a source of data that's fairly slow, then there's actually a special connector which then connects to that data to almost cache it, which is really handy. So that's one to look at. And if you get Lee Hurst actually has written a book, Hands On with Google Data Studio in 2020, and that's in chapter 9 of his book. So if you are learning Data Studio, then that's probably the best £20 you could spend at the moment, is grab Lee's book. That'll really get you up to speed very quickly.
I was about to say, it sounds like you've read it a lot, if you know.
I think it's fantastic.
Chapter 9 off the top of your head.
Chapter 9 off the top of my head. Everyone knows Chapter 9, Paul. I tell you, I'll go collect my check off Lee. No, it is in. That's I think that's the issue with Data Studio. There isn't so much. Well, there's stuff out there, but Lee's book really kind of takes you through the stages very quickly, so it gets you up to speed very quickly. I think saying so the size 1240, 1754. Yeah, I'd recommend that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and then you can ping that monthly to your clients or C-suite or wherever it's got to go if they don't go and log in from your analytics tracking that you've now got. So I think that's a wrap, to be honest with you guys. There's no more questions coming in. Obviously, there's only so much we can go into in depth, but if anyone's got any more questions, obviously on the webinar page, it's got all our profiles that you can reach out and ask us any more questions. I've learned a lot from this. I hope everyone else has as well. So that's great. And any last tips from you guys at all before we wrap this up?
I think I'd say mine is have patience. Definitely have patience. So if you're definitely getting into Data Studio for the first time, it's going to be stressful and it will break. Just don't let it break you. Just keep going, figure it out, and just Google it. That will always be the case, is Google it.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of support out there, and there's a great community around Data Studio, and people will be always there to help you learn that bit of SQL you need to do the trick you need to do. There's a lot of sharing that goes on, and really on that point is go and look at some of the reports that are out there. It's quite amazing that you can just copy any report, and you'll see that when we share these ones. You literally copy it, add your data sources, and you have that work. And this almost takes me back to the old days of web, where we're just copying websites to just learn how they worked. And it's it's amazing we have a data tool that's that democratized, really.
That's it. And I'd like to say thanks to SEMrush. And like I said, if anyone's got any questions, just reach out to us directly, and we'll pick up on them and support you as much as we can.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
No problem.
Cheers, guys.